Good day, everyone. This is Mark Schmidt, Superintendent of Schools, with an update regarding last night's board meeting, which took place on Monday, September 19th, 2011. The first items the board took up were the consent agenda items, and the vast majority of the consent agendas items were lane changes, which were approved or which were recommended from the Professional Growth Committee. So those were lane advancements for a variety of our teaching positions. The board then moved on to financial reports. Financial reports, the initial one was John Moore presenting a monthly recap of our investments, and then Bob Hammond presenting Budget Revision 3. Now, Budget Revision 3 for the school is basically a summary closing budget from the previous year. So in this case, it would be for the 2010-2011 school year. Now, our budget revisions and budget summaries have changed in appearance greatly this year, and that is as a result of various accounting, legal, statutory changes. Our fund balances, when we take a look at them, and our expenditure summaries and revenue summaries appear in some major categories. The first major category is unassigned. So those are dollars that are spent or saved in just that don't have any earmarked projected revenues or expenses for them. The next is the assigned area, which would make sense. If you have unassigned, you move to assigned, and those are areas that are designated for expenditure and revenue, but can be moved around generally administratively. And some examples of those are money we set aside for buses, technology, textbooks. These are all dollars from our referendum that have been earmarked for those expenses. Technology would be one of them. There's some money within the auditorium that gets put in that. Next is a committed area of funds. Now, committed has a little more difficulty in changing them or a higher standard in adjusting those numbers, whether you're putting them in there or removing them. And committed requires board approval. And those are things like tobacco settlement money. We have a number of years ago, the district received dollars from an insurance settlement, and those are basically our wellness dollars that our employees have been using. There's some staff development in there. There's some building remodeling, various things like that. And then finally, there's a general fund restricted, and restricted is placed in there because of statutory regulations. So the two that come to mind on that would be Title I. There's Title I dollars we receive that need to be spent specifically in those areas. Capital outlay would be another one that there's certain criteria that those dollars need to be spent in, and that needs to be in that fund. So those are really, the general fund restricted are really areas that, as a district, we do not have authority to be moving around, and it's designated that those dollars are either spent in there or placed in there. To summarize the budget, the revision for 2010-11 school year, we have our unaudited or the unassigned area decreases by 300-some thousand. The committed area has a new item. There was 366,000 that has been placed in the committed item, and those dollars came from federal dollars, stimulus dollars that took place that the school received last year. Last year, the school received $271,000 in the jobs bill that was passed by the federal government, as well as $95,000 in stimulus special ed funds, and those are basically pennies from heaven. That there were one-time dollars, and so the board has moved those over there for two reasons. Moved them to a preschool for two reasons. One of them to give us a more accurate picture of what our fund balance should be looking like, our revenue versus expenditures, because those dollars are no longer with us this year. We will not be receiving them. And then also to at least present an option to be able to address a all-day, everyday preschool option. Where that comes from is our community strategic planning last year had identified that as a top priority to have an all-day, everyday preschool as an option for the district. Tentatively right now, we've been doing a feasibility study, and we're looking at perhaps a pilot area or a pilot program in the Motley building, and that would require some renovations, and those dollars would tentatively be put for those renovations. I say all this tentatively in that the feasibility study has been taking place. Sarah Dragney and myself have been working on that with Jim Christopherson and our architect and other individuals within the district. And there's going to be a board work session on November 7th where those things, the feasibility study is laid out, and the board just looks at that data and maybe can come up with some direction on what the next steps would be. But we look at that as a potential, not only meeting the needs from our community, who's obviously voiced that loudly and clearly as a need, but also as a potential growth factor for our district in being able to attract students and families to our area with an all-day, everyday preschool option, particularly over in Motley. As one of the reasons we lose students to Pillager is they have that as an option right now for families. And in order for us to both meet our family needs and help prepare children for kindergarten, but also to make us competitive in attracting families to our schools and our communities. But that is still a tentative item and still under investigation and research to see what the next step should be on that. The board approved that budget. Next step for the board would be the audited budget, which will be coming forward to them in a few months. Next, the board approved a contract with Wadena County Corrections for the amount of $3,770. That is for Steve Comerford to come and work with our youth. The board also approved a transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4. Fund 1 is our general fund, which is the vast majority of what we do. Fund 4 is community ed. This transfer takes place because, excuse me, before the voter-approved referendum took place, we were levying $44,000 a year on our local taxpayers. One of the agreements with the referendum was that the board would not levy those dollars locally, but instead use matching state dollars from a referendum. As when you pass a referendum, we get dollars matched from the state with the local dollars that are spent. And that money, instead of $44,000 being able to be transferred, our community ed department, which took this program over, it was actually for school age care. Instead of needing $44,000 for that program, now is only requiring $14,000. So hats off to our community ed program for making the needed adjustments and bringing that down by about $30,000. Excuse me. The school board approved the initial tax levy. Now the tax levy, the school district's initial tax levy shows our taxes going down $200,000 from last year. However, Bob Hammond is concerned that there is $66,000 or 60-some thousand that is not reflected on there in some lease dollars. The other reason for the large decline is because we had a number of health and safety issues that were identified by the fire marshal. Those were levied last year, and those will not be levied this year. So those are the two main reasons for that reduction. But that would be the good news. The but is the state in their budget resolution this past session removed some homestead credits from individuals. And across the state, what that means is that that's like $258 million in a cut to all city, county, townships, school districts that help lower people's homestead property taxes. For our school district, that will be a loss of $90,000, or let me rephrase that. That will be $90,000 that our local property taxes payers will need to make up. So when we drop $200,000 in our taxes, maybe there's 60-some thousand that needs to be added in there. Then you add back the $90,000 that the state will not be helping with. In all likelihood, it means that our local taxpayers, as far as the school is concerned, will probably see their taxes remain flat, maybe a slight reduction. But the board made the initial approval last night. They need to be doing that before October 7th, and this was the board meeting before that. And then they make their final tax approval at the December meeting. Personnel committee meeting minutes. We have a number of personnel items. We have hired Aaron Gallstead as our assistant to the business manager. Now that position is a replacement for Marilyn Hassler, who is our accounts receivable. So Aaron is taking on the duties of accounts receivable and also learning the business office role. It is our goal and our hopes that Aaron can eventually replace Bob Hammond as our business manager, and this is a training model for Aaron to be able to learn school business finances, which is not a small task. So we welcome Aaron on board. Aaron comes to us from Maury's Foods. Next we have Cal Gungeon. We would like to welcome Cal on board. He's doing a shared bus route. Next is a part-time contract for Renee Schmitz for a Title I teacher at Staples Elementary. Staples Elementary is moving away from a para position to a part-time certified position, and with Renee one class away from completing her reading specialist certificate. She's currently licensed as an elementary teacher. We have Margaret Fisher and Travis Benson as custodial cleaners the board approved a contract for. That is still, those are the final shifts from Mike Cizik retirement a year ago, and shifting from a couple very part-time positions to more full-time. We have Jeannie Odden, who has been half-time nurse assistant at Motley site, who's going to be having another 2.7 hours as a paraprofessional. This is a fill-in with Linda Johnson, so instead of replacing a full-time para, we're able to do it with another additional 2.75 hours and moving some other positions around over there. Kelly Smithley had a grade change. Kelly was full-time online learning lab. Now she's half-time online learning lab and half-time special ed. Those result in a grade change, a slight grade change decrease for Kelly. We have 2 permissions to post for one-on-one paraprofessionals. We have an individual at the high school who has a one-on-one paraprofessional in their IEP, as well as a one-on-one paraprofessional at Motley, a student that moved into the district. We have a 1.75 paraprofessional at Staples Elementary hours. I'm sorry, not a 1.75 FTE, 1.75 hours. That is some shifting and a result from not rehiring Aaron Hauslog. But we needed to add some hours to Nancy Youngbauer to make that work. We have, I'm getting near the end, I promise, 0.5 paraprofessional in Motley Elementary for the kindergarten class over there. Motley Elementary is at 27 students. I'm sorry, the kindergarten. And that shift was made as we have Cindy Swenson doing more classroom time over in Motley. So that freed up Tony Spam for some time to spend more in the elementary, and particularly kindergarten, and then hiring a half-time paraprofessional to help out with those 27 kindergartners. We also have regretfully accept a retirement from Geraldine Peterson, who does our vocational rehab services due to medical reasons in the family. And we also have finally some addendums. There's a supplemental resource teacher. We're at 28 students over at the Motley Elementary. We've hired 1 teacher between grades 3 and 4 to help reduce those class sizes, namely in the core areas of math and reading. 1 more, and then finally the board has continued a 6-month medical leave of absence for Shelley Trantina. And our thoughts and our prayers are with Shelley and her family. And finally, the board approved a number of policy revisions. Those are basically statutory policy revisions that were either statutory or MSBA recommended. And then there were closed reports, or I'm sorry, there were reports from various departments and principals, and then the board went to closed session for a negotiations last night. Thank you for your time. You will see an attachment on this email with the budget summary from last night that I talked about previously. Thank you and have a great week, everyone. Take care.